Baba knows the way. For Joseph Baba Ifa, Baba knows the way. We follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients. He honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.
Hey family, thank you for tuning in to Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. Where only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by Botaniga Candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, hit that subscribe button. So today, we're going to be moving forward with our Odu series now that we're delving into the mixed signs, or the Omolodu, as they're known. The last one we came out with was Ogbe Weñe. So the next one in chronological order is going to be Ogbe Iwori, also known as Ogbe Weñe or Ogbe Weñe. How does that sound, Phil?
Sounds like a mouthful, but I love it.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Hey, man. Happy Sunday, everybody watching.
Yeah.
And guys, don't forget, we have our membership platform, which is open and available to all. And if you guys want more info, more shows, extra shows just for you guys, more contact and, discounts on merch or classes or courses, any of that jazz, just hit that join button right under the video and you can get access. But I am good, man. Happy to see you. It's always a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely always an engagement for sure. Besides the membership program, guys, if you're in it, let somebody know about it. But our big focus right now is definitely our The Light Within workshop that's going to be coming up now early October 4th and 5th. Seats are filling up pretty rapidly. If you haven't gotten in there, we've made things much more accessible for everybody because people are coming literally from around the world to come visit us here in Orlando. So it's very humbling, and we want you to be there if you definitely want to be there. So a bunch of different things we're going to go over. We're going to do a nice group Ifa divination. We're going to go over herbs, songs, Egong, everything Ifa Orisha, ultimately culminating in a nice encounter between all of us to be able to politic and get to know each other. So very excited about that. And any information, be sure to check our description and tap the link.
Sounds like a party.
For sure, for sure. So Ogbe Weñe, right? Egong is a very big topic within our spirituality. Now, people want to get back in touch with their ancestral selves, going all the way back to creation. And that's really what receiving your Egungun icon facilitates. So when we go back to creation, we have the source, and each of us has our own configuration in the form of our Odu. Now, that literally establishes a link between the dawn of time and our present manifestation. So along the way, unfortunately, generational curses may present themselves, traumas, things we haven't been able to heal from. And like all things, when we're done with life that are unresolved, they become inheritances or debts. And at this present stage in humanity, a lot of people in general, but definitely Afro-descendant or Caribbean people in the New World have experienced that due to the diaspora and whatnot. So Egungun really provides that option to be able to reconnect with our ancestral selves, all while healing by way of making it back to Ifa. Now, the reason I mention all of this is because technically in the Odu of Ogbe Iwori, or Ogbe Weñe, or Ogbe Weñe, is where Egungun came down from heaven. But another gentleman actually came down as well, and that was his brother Oro, right? A lot of people hear the word Oro, and they're like, what's that? Or they're like, oh my God, that guy. Definitely an intense energy. But Ogbe Weñe speaks of their celestial lives together as brothers, and they were the best of friends. They were the best of comrades. They loved each other very much, and they were completely loyal to each other. But the time had come with this Odu manifesting within the universe for them to begin their lives. So they both went for divination. And with the Odu of Ogbe Iwori, they were both told to perform sacrifice before heading down from heaven to earth. In reality, one could debate that Egungun actually didn't perform sacrifice, right? Because he felt confident and whatnot going down. Oro possibly did, because things, I think, turned out a little bit better for Oro here, even though they weren't ideal, but this is all interpretive. But Egungun looked at Oro and said, hey, I'm your older brother. I want to make sure everything is safe down there. Let me go down first. Give me a little bit of time, and then I'll come back and get you, or I'll give you a signal when to come down. So Oro said, all right, that's fine. I'll pay attention. And yeah, when you think things are ready for me, I appreciate it. I'll come down. So Egungun descended upon earth. And when he did, he was seen as mysterious, intriguing, interesting, unconventional. I mean, for anybody that's seen the Egungun masquerade, you can see why, all the cloth and things like that. But not only that, he had a different way about him. Like, when people saw him, they tried to get a reaction out of him to see how they were going to interact with this Orisha. So they started playing the bata drum, right? And he started dancing, and he started parading through the streets and moving in an unconventional way and almost comically, and people were enchanted by him, and they threw money at him, and they threw offerings at him. And they said, we got to bring this guy to the king. He's such a great time. So they took Egungun to the palace, and some people would go as far to say the king at this present moment was Shango. And definitely there's a huge link between these two Orishas and ultimately Oro as well. And when the king said, who are you? He said, my name is Egungun, right? I'm the Orisha of bones and ancestors. And he was like, oh man, we'd love to interact with you. The people love you. You seem like you could benefit us a lot, and you're a good time. So let's keep the party going. And they say that they partied for 9 days straight, right? So back in heaven, Oro started becoming preoccupied about his brothers, saying, oh my God, did they attack him? Did they hurt him? Any of these different things. So he decided on nightfall of the 9th day, he was going to descend to, save his brother and avenge him if necessary. But when Oro arrived, it was not what he expected. He saw his brother partying, drinking, with a couple women, he was just acting out. And Oro felt so betrayed. He realized that his brother Egungun had forgotten about him. And at that point, they say he entered into a terrible rage. And he actually started, scaring everybody and getting to the point where he was going to kill his brother Egungun. So when Egungun saw that Oro had gotten to the point of complete impatience with him and that there was no way they were ever going to be able to speak again, Egungun felt bad about it, but he's like, dude, I was partying, I'm sorry. But Oro wasn't trying to hear it. So Egungun ran into the palace, or ran into whatever house was available to him then. And they say that for 9 days, Oro literally terrorized the city. And after the 9th day of darkness, they say that he went into the jungle, or he went into the woods, where, his full name then became Orolewe, which means the noise from the house of herbs, or from the woods. And you kind of see these parallels even now. I don't know how specifically things are carried out, but I have spoken to a lot of traditional brothers that say a lot of places still actually reenact this divine celestial theater where, the Egungun festival will be 9 days, and then the Oro masquerade will be out for 9 days. And the caveat with the Oro part of things is Oro only wants to interact with his initiated sons, right? The gentlemen who have been initiated into that fraternity cult. Egungun is much more open, where, everybody has ancestors, right? But when we talk about Oro, we talk about a specific set of ancestors that are only compatible with the gentlemen that are initiated into that fraternity, right? So all of this is in the Odu Ogbe Iwori, and in the Odu Ogbe Iwori explains why the Egungun icon and the Oro or Orun icon, as it's called in Cuba, should never be around each other. So that goes for anybody that's uninitiated. If you are not initiated in Oro, you should not be in the presence of any icon associated with it whatsoever. And more importantly, for all the brothers that are initiated in Oro, nothing that has to do with Egungun, and speaking from an Orisha context, because both of them have to do with the ancestors, but from an Orisha context, nothing that is iconic of Egungun, such as the Isang Egungun icon, should ever be around anything that represents Oro. And for the brothers that are initiated, you know what that is. So, you've seen what happened in Cuba is that the Egungun cult and icon actually got absorbed by Odu or Oro, where you see kind of a confluence that happened there. But after some study and speaking, to brothers back in Nigeria or brothers in Cuba that are knowledgeable now a lot of people are able to come to a conclusion, okay, this pertains to this and this pertains to this. And, things like this could be very symptomatic if not carried out correctly, Anyone that's uninitiated, Oro is an absolute no-go, should never be seen. Like, you even see concepts like that in the Odu Ogbe Iwori, or 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗏, or Odus like Onwani Wosaso, etc. But this is the reason why Egong and Oro are two completely different deities that deal with the same things ancestrally, but Oro is a much more specialized situation. So that's the first pataki or 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 that comes to mind in Ogbe Weñe, because I remember the first time I read it, and mind you, always very, very careful and cautious about, how you communicate with other brothers and things like that, always in the most respectful fashion. I noticed that some of them had certain things around other things that, when reading this literature, you realize, like, ideally that shouldn't be. So for those that have incorporated themselves in our situation spiritually as far as a house, once they interacted with it as well, they realized why, it really shouldn't be that way, how they're meant to be completely separate. And it goes for eternity, because in this Odu, Oro said, whenever I see my brother again, his blood will be on my hands. So pretty intense, Phil.
Yeah, man. I was going to ask you, is there a certain way when you're reading these Odus that you're supposed to be in certain thought process when you're reading these?
Well, when you look at Ifa, right, we've been blessed to have a very intact spirituality, especially with all the trauma that Ifa has endured. Now, mind you, we had excellent ancestors, people that were luminaries and knew how to write things down in a way. But, to say that they had all the time to write everything, of course not. And there's going to be nuances within a story that, maybe somebody's not going to think. The most important thing when it comes to the interpretation of Ifa, which is the most important skill that any 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is going to develop, it's really how you're looking at it, and as long as you're not interrupting with the dogma of the story or the key points, it's always going to line up the same way. It just is to make it more digestible, especially for somebody that's coming into a consultation. Okay, and we do a reading and Ogbe Weñe comes out, and you just speak on the terms of Oro, Egong, Ifa. Somebody might be confused. They're like, what is all of this? But if you break it down to, hey, it was two brothers, one felt betrayed by the other, and because of it, they can't be around no more. Well, that's a timeless story for some people. So, it's all about knowing how to make it more digestible, and that's really where the value of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 comes into play, because the most important thing, especially now when we have so many people who really don't focus on interpretive skill, we never want to be just read and repeaters. We have a big thing here where, some brothers may be fresh out of the room or, who haven't put the time in. They'll read a story and just repeat it verbatim to a client or to a godchild, what have you. And sometimes the client or godchild comes out more confused than before they spoke. So, it's very key to understand we are here to become experts within this literature and know how to relay it in a way to help people understand Orunmila's original message. So, very key.
Okay.
In the Odu Ogbe Weñe, there's a story that I always appreciated. In this sign, Olodumare wanted to see who had the loudest goat. So, I guess 5,000 years ago, this was a big thing. Now we have car shows and things like that where, oh, look at my scat back, But back then, this was a big thing. So he said that whoever had the loudest goat was going to become his personal 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and advisor. And obviously, this is a very enviable position. Everybody wanted it because basically you were paid, So all of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏s started pooling their resources to get the biggest goat they could find, right? But there was Ogbe Weñe, who didn't have the means per se to buy the biggest goat. And mind you, he was competing with the pockets of the Meis, some of the beast Omoluos who had, a lot of prosperity. He's like, I got to find a way from an ingenuitive standpoint to be able to compete and overcome my competition. So he went running to Orunmila. And when he did that, Ifa recommended with his own Odu of Ogbe Weñe to perform sacrifice of a goat to Eshu, right? And he was like, well, how is that helping me? I need a goat to be able to make the noise the day of the competition. And Orunmila said, this goat is going to make more noise than any goat you're going to see there. So he said, all right, I have faith. So he sacrificed the goat to Eshu. And when he did that, after Eshu ate the goat, he said, I'm going to help you out. This is a little different, but just go with the flow. And he took a knife and he started skinning the goat. He dried the goat skins, all of these different things. And the day of the competition, Ogbe Weñe was the last one to arrive because of all the preparations. So the competition began, right? People started, smacking their goat, making noise, all these different things. There was some real contenders, and Olodumare was having a difficult time because they were kind of all sounding the same. And then out of nowhere, he started hearing what we know now as a drum. So when he heard that, and he looked to the side, and he saw Ogbe Weñe playing the bata drum, which is a huge thing in this Odu. And, he was playing, and he was doing his thing, and all the other Odus were looking around like, what is this guy doing? And Olodumare looked at him and said, is that goat skin? He said, yes. He said, you win. And all the other Odus were like, oh, what do you mean? The goat's dead. Oh, my goat's alive. Look at my goat. He said, the person with the loudest goat wins the competition. And he had the loudest goat, whether it was breathing or not. The bata drum sounds in a way that nothing else does. So at that point, Ogbe Weñe became Olodumare's personal advisor and a diviner, So he thanked Orunmila, he thanked Eshu. And I think this Odu is a real, testament to creativity. Ogbe Weñe is somebody that when they're faced with a challenge or with an obstacle, they have a very different way of thinking. I actually have an uncle of Ifa with this Odu. His name is Odu Ogbe Weñe. He's all from our lineage under our godfather 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏. And I just want to make a mention of him because this gentleman, from what I understood, I never had the pleasure of meeting him in person, but I did have the pleasure of speaking to him multiple times on the phone with my godfather. And they said this gentleman was a walking encyclopedia.
It's like you.
Well, what have you, right? But I mean, in a time, I will say that I have a couple advantages. I think, being a child of the information age and having so many things accessible to me, I think it's definitely helped. My lackluster collegiate career helped a little bit as well with study techniques. But they say that this gentleman could literally repeat the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 verbatim. So what is the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏? And we're going to get into it because we're going to go over the video. I'm not sure which one's going to come out, but there's ultimately going to be a video called Ifa, a written tradition, that talks about it. But back in the day, I think Eddie and all those guys contemporarily have 25 to 35 years of Ifa, each of them. That was really the resource. That was the ABC. That's what everybody had. So they were able to focus on one set of literature and really, standardize it. But they said that, this gentleman, literally, they would test him all the time too, from what I understand. Like, they'd be like, oye, 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗏, and he'd be like, okay, it says this, and he'd go all the way down verbatim. I guess he just had an eidetic or photographic memory like that. But Ogbe Weñe is somebody that has a lot of talent, somebody that's going to have a lot of neurons for Ifa, and just somebody that's going to think very differently and have a different way of interpreting things. But somebody with a lot of talent and a lot of intelligence, right? And you could see that within this story and the other ones that we're going to speak of as well, because this Odu, if it has one thing, it's stories and information. In this sign, Iku, or death, became jealous of Orunmila. And he or she, however you want to interpret it at the moment, because it kind of goes back and forth, was becoming frustrated with Orunmila because Orunmila was always saving everybody's life, Now, mind you, if Orunmila saved somebody's life, it's because it wasn't their time to go. They were in the gray area. But Iku didn't like that because it was somebody that had a lot of vice when it came to human flesh and misery. So she wanted to eat or continue consuming. So this really frustrated her because Orunmila made sure that she only got what was necessary or what was hers at that moment. So she wanted to find a way to, destroy Ifa. And she actually went running to Olodumare and said, Orunmila betrayed you. He started creating human beings without you. He's saving lives he's not supposed to. He's trying to compete with you. He says that he's bigger than you, better than you. Like all this gossip and nonsense. And Olodumare, being weak-minded at the moment, agreed and believed what was said. And he said, if this is the case, go down and bring him back to me or kill him. So death is on the way. And Orunmila had a really great intuition in this sign. And he always had the habit of reading himself anyway. And when he did, his own Odu of Ogbe Weñe came out with a prophecy of imminent death. So he knew he had an issue, right? Once again, Eshu came to be his savior, right? Or 𝘃cie came to the rescue. He fed 𝘃cie, and 𝘃cie actually found a way to replace Orunmila. And what he did is he took some clay and things like that. He took some cowrie shells, and he confectioned basically a head. And they put it in the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍. It got covered in the blood and the feathers and whatnot. For any brother who's done this 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍, you're familiar with the context. And he was going to deposit the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍, or did, at the foot of a tree. So Death was planning on meeting him there anyway. And when she saw the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍, she said, "Oh, good, he killed himself. Makes my life easier." So she took the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍 and she ran back to heaven with it. And when they opened up the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍, she said, "Look, I got him." And when Olodumare started moving the feathers and the blood and things like that, he said, "Miss, this is sand and cowrie shells. This isn't Orula." She said, "Oh my God, he tricked me. I'm going to go down and get him again." And he said, "Nobody can die twice." So at that point, Orunmila escaped death. And that's where, in this Odu, Orunmila really became eternal, to the point where till this day we're still talking about him.
Yeah.
So very popular 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍, for sure. I actually have had the pleasure of performing it once. Luckily, the person wasn't going through any health issues at the time, but from what I understand, they've been doing very well ever since. But it's one of the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍s to actually escape death. And this is really one of the Odus that shows Orunmila's cunning at his finest, whether it's, the goat story, whether it's this story, or the ones to come. He's constantly having to be in a position to really have to utilize his intellect and obviously 𝘃cie's help to be able to save himself, right? This is Odu, unfortunately, with a lot of envy. You're going to notice that the person is constantly being attacked or criticized or undermined because they're very talented and very progressive. So Orunmila was on this wave where, can't lose. He won the goat competition. He escaped death. He's eternal to a certain degree, and he's just trying to continue his Ifa practice and do the right thing, which is what he's been doing this whole time. So he had this issue where a neighboring tribe basically started envying him because they noticed that more people were immigrating, or migrating, better said, to Ife to initiate into Ifa with Orunmila rather than initiating into their ancestral rites, right? Not that they weren't, but they were leaning more towards Ifa. So the leader over there decided, we're going to attack Orula and we're going to kill him. So once again, Orunmila's minding his own business. And before he left the house that day, he read himself. And the Odu of Ogbe Iwori was revealed. Once again, his Odu, where Ifa told him, once again, give a rooster to 𝘃cie's. It's a pretty broken record in this theme. For anybody with this Odu, like for any brother 𝗏𝗏𝗏, feed 𝘃cie's as much as possible. And for the people that have hand of Ifa with their 𝘃cie's, make sure it's at least getting fed once a year, right? Just to stay in line with this Orisha, because, it's going to be 3 examples here where 𝘃cie's literally saved or made Orula's life. So it came out that he had to give the rooster to 𝘃cie's, and he did. And 𝘃cie's said, you're going to have an unexpected situation. Whenever you feel lost or you feel like you can't handle it, just drop this powder and I'll handle the rest. So Orunmila went outside to deposit the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍 and things like that. And when he did, he saw an army. And he kind of looked around and he wasn't expecting this for sure. And when he looked, he realized that he was being attacked or about to be attacked upon. So when that occurred, they started charging at him. He saw the general and he said, I'm really in a pickle. So he did exactly what 𝘃cie's told him to, and he threw the powder, which was the powder from the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍. And when he did, it created almost like a sandstorm where it blinded everybody. And 𝘃cie's, in the frenzy, grabbed Orula's hand and went running with him through the battlefield, avoiding all of the opposition. So when he got right up to the general, 𝘃cie's put a machete in his hand, where the 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗍 takes a machete as well, and he said, do what you got to do. And 𝘃cie's beheaded the other general, right? As soon as that happened and the gentleman was decapitated, all of the mist disappeared, and everybody said, where's Orula? And when they looked behind him, they saw Orula holding the general's head in his hand.
Oh,
at that
geez.
point, at that point, it always makes me think of the movie Gladiator, when they send the guy in to go negotiate with the Germanic tribes, and then the guy, you know what he does.
Yeah. This is Sparta stuff.
Yeah, straight up. So at that moment, they all pledged allegiance to Orula, and, word went across Africa, speaking about how invincible this gentleman was. Some people applauded it. Other people became jealous of it, but at the end of the day, everybody respected it and feared it because he never lost a war, right? But it speaks once again of the importance of 𝘃𝗺𝗃𝗃. In this Odu, it also speaks of the importance of the 𝘃𝗺𝗃 powder and why it usually goes on top of 𝘃𝗺 icons, because it was with the 𝘃𝗺𝗃 powder that 𝘃𝗺 was able to blind Orunmila's enemies and ultimately seek and achieve victory. Right?
What's the powder made from?
So, interesting thing, 𝘃𝗺𝗃 was identified in the Odu of Ogbe Iwori, amongst others. Now, Orunmila is synonymous with a tree in Yoruba land known as the Oshun tree, because the word 𝘃𝗺𝗃 means iyere Osun, which means the powder of Osun. So what happens over there is, being that Orunmila embodies this tree, when this tree falls, because ideally it shouldn't be cut down, I don't know how much that's carried through at this point, because demand dictates procedure. When this tree would fall down, they would kind of toss it in like these wooden shacks and leave it there for like a year. But when they would come back, all they would find is this golden powder, right? Because the termites got to it. So it was identified that with this powder, we were going to perform 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗶, which is the process on the tray of Ifa. And this ultimately became interpreted as the blood of Orunmila. So you'll hear of other, spiritualities say, hey, we're bathing in the blood of said Messiah and things like that.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Ifa had that concept for thousands and thousands of years, where when we perform 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗶, we bathe in the blood of Orunmila via 𝘃𝗺𝗃𝗃 or the Osun tree powder. So to be frank with you, it's termite vomit mixed in with a couple other termite fluids and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So that must be why it makes me sneeze. But with this powder, Orunmila was able to perform the enchantment and ultimately win the war via 𝘃𝗺𝗃𝗃's help. But for anybody with this Odu, unfortunately, it's plagued by conflict. People are always testing the person. People are always trying the person, trying to see if they are what, is being said about them or whatnot. You cannot allow people to take you out of your character or bring you down to their frequency, because then you're proving that there's two unsuccessful individuals in the room. But in this Odu, it's a little bit pessimistic, because it says as long as the world is in existence, there will be witchcraft, right? So Orunmila, once again, won a war and won a battle and was trying to get on with his life. But he just noticed now that instead of people knocking on his door or trying to attack him physically, he started feeling these symptoms where like, I woke up today, I don't feel good. I have no reason not to feel good. I worked out, I slept, I stretched, all these different things. I should feel great, but I don't. Or, me and my family are in contention, or people are looking at me a certain type of way, or certain business deals aren't hitting how they should be based on my preparation. Something's going on. So he actually contracted other babalaos to perform divination for him. And when they did, the Odu of Ogbe Weñe was revealed, where Ifa told him, you're being a victim of witchcraft, or Ogu as it's known. Now the word Ogu means medicine, but medicine can be applied one of two ways within, Yoruba esoteric belief: positively to heal, or negatively to hurt, right? And he said, but I don't bother anybody. I go to work every day. I'm not a flashy guy. I have what I have. I really just want to live in peace. And they said the only way you will live in peace, and the only way peace can be attained, is through victory. So you have to perform 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗶, and you have to be consistently on top of your practices so that your enemies never destroy you. Because as long as you are here, they're going to keep attacking you. And this really depressed Orunmila, but what depressed him even more was the idea of the onslaught actually affecting him. So he did exactly what he was told. And until this day, we still perform 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗶, and there's still this epic battle between good and evil on a daily basis, But unfortunately, Ogbe Weñe says there will never be an end to witchcraft. There will never be an end to warfare. There will never be an end to conflict, because we still deal with people that haven't awakened to a point to realize that if somebody has something that's interesting, it's because they worked hard to get it or to maintain it. So really the question comes down to, are you willing to work as hard as that person to achieve what they have or more? It's really the Odu that marks the differential between motivation and envy. But Orunmila identified here that, we can never stop, because the one moment we do, we get caught slipping, and then, something very negative could happen. So 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗶, 𝗵𝗶𝗸𝗶. It never ends, right?
Do you think all super mega successful people do some type of spiritual, religious, or that's what I'm looking for? You know what I mean? Like,
What do you mean, like process?
yeah,
Well, brother,
because hard work can get you very, very far.
yeah.
But you gotta have some luck too, right? You know.
Well, it's not always who you are. Sometimes it's where you're at. Sometimes it's who you're around. I think it really depends what people define as God on their own personal basis, right? For someone such as myself who practices Ifa, it's very simple. You know, God is Olodumare, God is nature, God is the water on top of a leaf at 4 a.m. God is me moving around an ant to not step on it. Like, that's what it represents to me. Now, if you speak about more conventionally, I don't know. I do know that historically it has been revealed that there's always been esoteric themes in any of the major changes in history, whether it's any of the world wars, you know, any situations like that. God was at play somehow, or spirituality, better said. Whether it was positive or negative, I'm not sure, but I do know that we live in a time where it could be very detrimental for some of these influential people to be identified with anything that would put them in a specific demographic. Because, like, let's say, for example, right, because Ifa is trending right now. Ifa is the wave. So any of these, you know, famous musicians, actors, politicians, even possibly the people we attend to, they stay private because at the end of the day, their job is to be as appealing and as marketable to the masses as possible. That is their business, right? But when you live in a world where there's so much discrimination based on spirituality and so many other factors, no one wants to identify with anything anymore because it could upset anybody. And I mean, with certain turn of recent events, I mean, you know, for anybody that's influencing, especially with anything spiritually themed, you know, even though we might not agree with everything anybody says, I mean, we can't dispute their right to say it. So, but I do think any successful person has some spiritual influence. That might not necessarily mean they're going to church or temple or anything like that, but just having a moment of gratitude in the morning, meditation, understanding that there is something above, I think all of those things can bring somebody to a higher ground, because the biggest disadvantage anyone without a higher power has is where they become responsible for everything. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be accountable for our actions, but what hope do you have when you can't figure something out? Yeah. Because there's been plenty of moments in my life where, you know, literally let go and let God deal, because I've done everything I can. You know, like the concept of motivated patience. Do as much as you can, and then at that point, just be patient for the results. But if you have no higher power or haven't accepted one, what is there to expect, you know, other than the wind going by? So I think anybody that's successful, a big part of their success was hope, because no matter how confident people are, no one could ever believe that, you know, a mass of people are going to be interested in anything we say. Like, if somebody would have told me the channel, you know, would have reached this level of subscribership, you know, however it can be interpreted as far as size, I mean, I would have never believed that. I didn't think we'd ever make it to 1,000 subscribers.
I mean, 160,000. You packed that in a stadium.
Yeah, for sure. So when you hear things like that, that's the only way I think, you know, successful people can get to that peak, because what motivates you when, you know, you don't have the answers at that point. And I think anybody that denies the spiritual aspect of self and humanity, I mean, it's pretty sad. So that's why this Odu says there has to be something that can support us through these hard times, because if not, we just kind of would be stagnant. You know, the energy is always moving. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I always wondered that, because...
Yeah, there has to be. I mean, they can't talk about it. I mean, you look at politicians and things like that, you know, what space do they have? And, you know, they have a follow. I mean, look at, perfect example, completely different Odu, but perfect example. Look at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, where you had the character 𝘀𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗏, right? Who some people interpret as Jesus. When he went to visit Orunmila, Ifa told him, I'm not asking you to proclaim Ifa, but I'm asking that you perform sacrifice so that you don't suffer a premature death based on envy. And 𝘀𝗶𝗏𝗏 looked at him and said, I want to, but the issue is if anybody finds out that I interact with these things, I'm going to lose my entire following and they might kill me anyway. And Orunmila looked at him and said, but if you don't do this, death is certain. And he said, I'd rather take my chances. And we all know how that ended up. So it's the same thing with any individual right now in a position of influence that is completely unrelated to spirituality, whether it's music, politics, acting, anything that has nothing to do with anything spiritual. They don't want to identify because that could cause them, I don't know, to lose 1 million sales, you know?
Yeah.
And when you're talking about the establishment and the companies that are involved, they don't want to hear none of that. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of dollars. So definitely there has to be some type of spiritual influence because we exist. But whether we're ever going to know, I don't know. There's too many non-disclaimers that have been signed, you know? So non-disclosures, forgive me. But yeah, I do believe that there has to be because it comes out later, you know, the occult and spirituality and all these different things and the influences that they've had on major world occurrences.
Yeah.
So in the Odu Ogbe Weñe, God, there's so much information here. It speaks of a story. If anybody ever looks in the book in Ogbe Weñe or the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, it says in this sign was where Oshun stole Orunmila's tools. So, unfortunately for the daughters of Oshun in this sign, the first thing they interpret is, oh, Orula's mad at you or what have you. I don't agree with that. So, what happened here is, and mind you, we love all the ATRs. I have very dear friends that are in Palo and things like that. But this is just what the scripture says, right? You know, we weren't always all fraternized. You know, in Africa, you know, we had issues, we had disputes and whatnot. So the Yoruba tribe, at least in this Odu based on scripture, was at odds with the Congo tribes, or those are the Congolese, the Bantu, etc., from the river basin. So the reason being is because the Congos were very jealous, once again, of Orunmila having a huge following, you know, where people were kind of leaning more towards Ifa at the moment. Once again, not that they were completely abandoning Mayombe or anything like that. But, you know, people were starting to get their mano orula. They're like, oh, there's another aspect of our spirituality we could be delving into. So they started heading over there. So not everybody was okay with that. So the Congos had a spy that they were going to send, and it was ultimately Oshun, or Chola, whatever you want to call her in this case. And she went and infiltrated Yoruba land, right? And when she arrived in the village, people were enchanted by her. They're like, wow, what a beautiful woman. No one's ever seen her before. And they started going to Orula like, hey, aren't you looking for a wife? Look at this. And when he looked at her, he was smitten. He was like, wow. So, you know, little by little, he started getting to know her and whatnot. As things started becoming more intense, he read himself with Ifa, where Ifa told him in Ogbe Iwori not to jump or make lasting decisions on people too quickly. He performed sacrifice, and the sacrifice, ironically, was actually a food to the earth, where he had to open a hole and leave certain ingredients inside of it. And yeah, he had to cover it with palm leaves and things like that. That's what Ifa told him. So one night he was with his new wife and, you know, what have you, having a romantic evening, and he fell asleep. And when he fell asleep, Oshun, the spy, took his Ifa implements. She took his tablero, she took his irofa, or the deer horn, she took the horsetail, she took the his necklace, his opele, his ibo. She took his whole tool set, right, that the babalao needs to function. And when she did, she went running through the jungle, heading back to the Congo, and she actually fell in the hole that Orunmila had performed a bow in, right? And when she did, she broke a leg. But she was able to survive, ironically, off of the offerings that Orunmila had left in there. So when Orunmila woke up and he saw his wife was gone and his opele was gone and all these things were gone, he's like, oh man, I'm in a pickle. They kidnapped my lady and they took all my tools. So when he went running outside, he said, has anyone seen my wife? And one lady who was always up in the middle of the night was like, I thought I saw her go into the jungle with some things, you know. She looked like she was in a hurry. And he was like, man, that's so odd. So he went running into the jungle, and the first place he thought about going back to was the place where he did a bow. He thought that maybe that was like the epicenter of where he could locate her. But when he actually looked in the hole, he saw her there with a broken ankle and his tools and, you know, barely surviving. And he said, you know, what is the meaning of this, honey? She said, no, it's not what it looks like. He said, why would you steal from me? I need honesty now, or I'm going to leave you in this hole to die. She said, no, I'm from this tribe. They're jealous of you. I didn't want to follow through with this, but if I didn't, they were going to kill my family, all these different things. And Orula realized that, you know, the emotions were real, but she was compromised. So he helped her up. He nursed her back to health. There's like this epic tale of where he goes and they find a way to bring the family over and all these different things. And he actually stayed with her. This Odu is known as the Odu of la Espía Conga, which means the Congo spy. where Oshun came and basically acted like she wanted to be Orunmila's wife in the beginning to steal from him, but she actually did fall in love with him because she realized that he was a gentleman and he was not what he was portrayed to be back in her homeland. So she actually ended up staying and becoming, till this day, his preferred 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍. The ironic part about it, this Odu, is it's a complete opposite of what happened in 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗔, where Orunmila fell in the hole and Oshun helped him out. So it's ironic how these two Orishas are kind of always helping each other, right? But this Odu says that whether it's a daughter of Oshun or any of the women that could have been initiated under this Odu, they must be fanatics of Orunmila, right? They must attend to their Ifa, they must be loyal to Ifa, and it's not that they can't practice anything else that they choose that is moral, but ultimately they always have to come back to Ifa, because Ifa is going to provide solutions that other spiritualities are going to be unable to, right? This Odu also says for anybody that has it, that they need to be slow to judge and come to conclusions, because in this sign, Orunmila became infatuated with a woman very quickly, and he married her and invited her into the home and all these different things, and she ultimately betrayed him or was actually spying on him to hurt him. In this case, she actually did love him, and she was able to, better herself, and others that might not be the case. So this Odu also says that the person can initiate into Congolese faiths or Mayombe faiths if they so choose. Just understand that there's always a balance, depending on which one you want to stimulate more. If you're somebody that's very focused on palo, and you might already be scratched by the time you receive your mano orula with this sign. It's not that we give up those things, but, Orunmila has to be a focus as well. Just like for the brothers who come with Ogbe Weñe and Ifa that had a tenure in palo as well, we don't leave a good friend behind. So things like the prenda and all of those obligations should definitely still be fulfilled, so that we can stay on that wave and keep getting those benefits. But, this is the Odu of sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah.
But Ogbe Weñe, I think full circle. This is always a story that's made me laugh a little bit. I think it's a good way to bring it full circle. When we talk about this Odu speaking about witchcraft, right, and the consistent theme of war, good and evil, all these different things, one of the biggest conflicts that ever occurred here was between Orunmila and Osaing, right? Because Orunmila was an Ifa priest and Osaing was a herb worker. And Orunmila was envied by Osaing. Osaing was jealous of Orunmila because he had prestige, he had honor, he had knowledge, he had wisdom, he had means and resources. And Osaing was just kind of like a knock-around guy, he was a little unorganized, he would do whatever made sense at the moment and just kind of go through life. He was a little bit of a bully, but he was very jealous of Orunmila because of all these things. So one day, once again in this Odu, he just woke up and decided, I'm going to kill Orunmila. So Orunmila, once again with this intuition and good habits, read himself, Ogbe Weñe was revealed, where Ifa said he needed to perform sacrifice and take it into the woods. But when he took it into the woods, Osaing saw him and started chasing after him. Now, Osaing is known as 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗃, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗍, which is Osaing has more ability on one leg than we do on two. So ironically, Osaing was hot on his tail, and he was really catching up to him. So Orunmila did a couple maneuvers and was able to get a couple yards between them and find himself in a clearing, preparing for death or whatnot. And at that moment, a woman presented herself. And some people say she was like a tree-type hybrid thing. And she said, "Are you okay?" He said, "No, this guy's trying to kill me." And she said, "Well, maybe I can help you." He said, "I'd really appreciate that." She said, "Well, if you want me to save you, you have to start a relationship with me. You got to marry me."
Hey.
And he was like, "Ma'am,
you're a tree.
You're a tree. It's a little different. We're not contemporary. I don't think this is the time. That's the last thing on my mind." Well, she said, "That's the first thing on my mind. So if you don't want it, you could die."
Oh.
So he kind of looked at her, and he kind of remembered Osaing was getting closer, and he was like, "I'm all yours." So she embraced him, and they went into the ground, right? And Osaing ran by and was like, I'll get him another day, right? He couldn't find them. So when they came back up, she said, "That's who was chasing you?" He said, "Yes, ma'am." He said, "That's my son." Orunmila in this Odu, as vengeance, started a relationship with Osaing's mother and became his stepfather.
Oh, that's ultimate.
So Osang hated him forever, but he had to respect it because he was with his mom, and Orunmila lived with her forever and fell in love with her, and she actually taught him about the herbs and how to defend himself and gave him complete dominion over the forest. So I always thought that was a nice little jab back at what Osang was trying to do. But this Odu actually states that there may be an age gap within a relationship, a couple years, give or take, where the person shouldn't be adverse to that. Because in this sign, Orunmila carried on a relationship with a much older woman, something that he didn't expect, but at the same time was very beneficial to him. She was a perfect counterpart to him and him to her. So, it speaks of that. Unfortunately, it speaks of the conflict and the warfare and all these things. Once again, Ifa says as long as we defend ourselves, we should be fine, but we cannot become too complacent with anything, because it'll be that moment when people are able to take advantage and hurt us, right? Ogbe Weñe overall, from what I've noticed, and it speaks heavily of the use of herbs, holistic measures, learning about botany spiritually as well as allopathically. It speaks of all these different things. But Ogbe Weñe is an Odu of a lot of conflict. It is an Odu of a lot of disputes and things like that, where the person has to kind of create their own situation to have their peace. Like, for example, if we get married, it's because we want to buy a house and create a home. So the further we are away from relatives and the more we're able to integrate into our families, such as our partner and our children, and have our own space, that usually leads to the most successful end here. But it's also a very talented Odu. Ogbe Weñe has high interpretive skill. Their mediumship and their intuition is unmatched. The knowledge they can gain about Orisha, and especially Ifa, could be top tier. It really is just a matter of focus and seeing what it is that they want to dedicate themselves to. But, from the people I've interacted with and the situations I've encountered it's a very nice Odu that, with a lot of rationale, humility, and maturity, people can get a very nice destiny and life from.
All right. Well, you know what else people can get a good portion of?
The membership program.
You know me too well.
Hey.
All right, guys. Well, it's that time again to show some love to the people who show love to the channel.
Thank you.
And if you're wondering why I'm playing that music, that's because we are talking about our membership program. It's real easy. Right under this video, there's a join button. You hit that button, you can join the platform. We got 3 separate tiers, each tier offering its own separate perks, whether it's extra shows, early releases of podcasts, discounts on merch or classes that Joseph mentioned earlier.
Yep.
A whole plethora of things. So today we're going to just spotlight some of our VIPs, our VIPs.
Okay.
All right. First one here, we got Must Be Magic.
All right. Thank you.
We got Alex Ruiz.
What's up?
We got Bruni.
VIP.
Tiffany Monroe.
Thank you.
Purpose Driven AI. They were
Nice.
new in that. They've only been a member for a week, so they were in our chat last week. Remember?
Welcome. Yeah. Oh yeah. I recall. Yeah. Thank you. Welcome.
Yep. We got Damian Cheatham.
Love it.
We got Soleil.
Okay.
We got Benettan.
Very important.
Yoga. With
Appreciate you.
Yoga Rudy. Sorry.
Okay.
Alyssa Statler.
Very
and
nice.
rounding out is Ace Tribe.
Love it. Well, guys, thank you for being the best part of the channel. If you know anybody else that wants to be a part of our community, be sure to let them know all the great things you're getting in there. A couple mentions of our sponsors. We have a couple now at this point. We have Luna Hall and Studio for all events.
Let me play that video. So because it looks so nice.
Absolutely, yeah.
Here we go. What is Luna Studio?
Yeah, so it's a place where dreams come true, right? But weddings, baby showers, photo shoots, podcasting as well. For anybody that wants a different scenery, any of those kind of things can happen there for sure. We also have Ifa Orisha Event Center for anybody that's trying to do ceremonies like Orisha Dimu, Hand of Ifa, and you need a space other than home. They make themselves available. Twin Precision Mobile Detailing is one of our sponsors as well. Be sure to holler at those brothers if you want your car to look brand new. Really appreciate all of our sponsors and the role they play in our success. And we hope to see them grow along with us.
Absolutely.
So a couple closing words, right? 𝗏𝗏𝗏candlesandmore.com is up and running for all your service and product needs. We do ship. If you can't catch us here on YouTube, be sure to catch us on any of the other apps like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, etc. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, guys. A big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.
Baba Joseph showed the path today. Baba knows the way, we follow follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred